beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I will be doing the Book Snob book tag originally created by Tia and All the Books. I will link her original video down below. This tag includes 7 questions about your personal bookish preferences and different genres or subject matters that you think are heavily critiqued in the booktube community, so let's get right into it. The first question is adaptation snob. Do you always read the book before seeing the movie or the TV show for that matter? And I'm starting this video off with an unpopular opinion, but frequently I don't. I talked about this a little bit in a video not too long ago, so sorry if this sounds a little repetitive. I'm just going to explain my logic for people who may not have seen that video, because don't crucify me, guys. I do have reasons for doing this. And that's that to me, starting a really long book or a series is much more of a time commitment than sitting down to watch a movie or to binge through a TV show. So a lot of times, I'm going to watch the adaptation first to see if I like it, and then if I think it's something I want to invest my time in, then I'll pick up the book. For example, Game of Thrones. I watched that show before I read any of the books, and I'm actually really glad I did, because those are really long books, and I actually think had I read the books first, I would have been disappointed in the TV show. I did the same thing with Outlander as well. A lot of times the original, no, pretty much every time, I can't think of an exception, the book is always better than the movie or the show. So if you watch the show or the movie first and you like it, then the book is just gonna be even better. Sometimes if you read the book or the series first and then you watch the show, you're gonna be disappointed. The cast isn't gonna look like how you imagined them in your head. The storylines, they're gonna cut things out. So sometimes watching the movie or the show first makes you appreciate the book even more. I know with Pride and Prejudice, which is my absolute favorite book of all time, I watched the 2005 film adaptation before I read the book, but I was also about 11 years old the first time I watched that movie, which is probably too young to be reading Jane Austen and getting everything you can out of it, even for someone like me who's always interested in reading. Now, sometimes if there's a book that I've been wanting to read and I hear that it's getting a film adaptation, I'm going to prioritize that book and read it before I go to see the movie, especially if it's a mystery, because sometimes I feel like foreshadowing and twists aren't executed as well in movies, and it might be better for me to read the book first so I can really think about the ending and I can be genuinely surprised by it. Question number 2. Format snob. You can only choose one format of book to read for the rest of your life. Which do you choose? Physical book, ebook, or audiobook? This for me is an absolute no-brainer. I'm gonna choose physical books. I did at one point when I was younger have a e-reader. It was a Barnes & Noble Nook, which I don't even know. Do people have those anymore? I don't know. I hear all the time of people having Kindles, but I don't think I've ever heard someone be like, oh yeah, I have a Nook. And I just didn't really like it. I liked how convenient it was that I could get books at the tap of the screen. However, I just missed the feel of holding a physical book. It just wasn't the same to me. And as for audiobooks, I've only at this point in time listened to one audiobook in my entire life. That was Sadie by Courtney Summers. And while I did think that was a good audiobook, I found that I was reading it much slower than I would have if I was reading it physically. Did anybody else have to do those quizzes all the time in school where your teacher wanted you to take a quiz to see if you were a visual, audio, or hands-on learner? Every single time I got visual, so I think I just really need to see the words on the page. I will listen to an audiobook again in the future. I just think it was much more sluggish for me personally than when I can actually read it myself. I am a pretty fast reader, and I think listening to an audiobook slowed me down. Question 3, ship snob. Would you date or marry a non-reader? Now, if we were going to construct my dream man, my dream romantic partner, I would definitely want this person to be someone who enjoys to read, because that's something that I've always enjoyed, and I love being able to talk about literature. I love being able to recommend people books, to have other people recommend me books, so that is something that ideally I would want. But But if I were to enter a relationship with someone who doesn't read or doesn't like to read as much as I do, that wouldn't necessarily be a deal breaker if we had other things in common. Because reading is something I love, but it's not the only thing I like to do. Maybe we could talk about television or movies or history or travel or food. Those are all other things that I'm interested in that my partner could possibly be interested in as well. I've never been in a romantic relationship, so I'm definitely not an expert, but I think that you and your partner don't need to have everything in common. You definitely need to have some common interests, but you don't need to marry a person who is exactly like you. I actually think it's good if you guys have some complementary qualities, and I don't think you should discount someone solely because they don't like to read when they might have a lot of other great qualities. There are deal breakers for me in relationships. However, if the partner I have is someone who doesn't really like to read, that's something that I could see myself getting past. Up next, genre snob. You have to ditch one genre of book, never to be read again for the rest of your life. Which do you choose? I could easily here say something like erotica, because I've never read a single erotic book. Nor do I want to. I don't know if I ever will. I thought about maybe doing a series on my channel where I read 50 Shades of Grey, just to give you my thoughts from an asexual person's perspective. I don't particularly want to do that, but I think it could be funny. However, I feel like if I am going to answer this question, I have to say a genre that I actually have read or do read sometimes, because I could easily say erotica or westerns or something that I honestly have no interest in reading, but that's kind of a cop-out answer, so I don't think that counts. I think the answer I'm going to go for with this one is sci-fi, because there are certain sci-fi books that I might be interested in reading. However, overall, it's not a genre that I gravitate towards, so I think I could easily cut that out of my life and not miss it. Question 5. Uber genre snob. You can only read one genre of book for the rest of your life, cutting out all others. Which genre do you choose? This is tricky because I do like a lot of different genres. I like classics. I like historical fiction. I like fantasy. However, if I had to pick one, I think it would be mysteries and thrillers, because that is my favorite genre. And with other genres, I go through periods where I'm not interested in that at the moment. It's just not what I'm in the mood for. There are times when I don't feel like reading classics. There are times when I don't feel like reading fantasy. There are times when I don't feel like reading historical fiction. However, at pretty much any moment in time, I'm in the mood for a mystery or a thriller. So that's something that I think I'll always be interested in and that will always keep being exciting for me. Question 6, community snob. Which genre do you think receives the most snobbery from the bookish community? So I don't really know if this is answering the question specifically, but I think really the types of books that receive the most snobbery are any kind of book that is geared more towards a female audience. So this could be something like romance, erotica, or anything that's more so a feminine book, chick lit, or anything like that. Because I think our society generally looks down upon feminine things. I don't know if you've seen it, but Lindsay Ellis has a really great video talking about Twilight and the backlash that that series received, which was largely due to it being written by a female author for a largely female audience. Now, I'm not saying that it's a well-written book. I mean, Bella was an awful main character, and there was definitely some questionable choices. However, it wasn't deserving of the vitriol it received, and that was largely due to its existence as a feminine book. There are plenty of books geared towards men that are poorly written, have bad characterization, and bad plot choices, but they never seem to receive the same burning hatred as chick lit books. So I really think anything in that sort of vein are the things that receive the most snobbery. I definitely think people who say they read those sorts of things are seen as less intelligent, when that's really not the case. So I'm not exactly answering the question because it asked for one specific genre. However, I think things like romance, erotica, chick lit, genres that have largely female audiences are definitely met with the most snobbery because of how our society looks down at feminine things as less than. And the final question, snobbery recipient. Have you ever been snubbed for something that you were reading or just for reading in general? I don't know if I've ever been snubbed for something that I was reading. However, I think I've definitely been judged for it. I don't know if snubbed is really the right word, though. I remember in middle school, a lot of my male classmates didn't want to read The Hunger Games because it had a female protagonist and therefore in their eyes was a girl's book. And because of that, some of them kind of looked down upon it because they perceived it as being for girls, kind of going back to what I was saying in the last question. I also had a discussion in class in high school with one of my male colleagues where we were talking about John Updike versus Margaret Atwood. And I have to be completely honest, I've never read a novel by John Updike. However, I had to read an essay by him and some of his poetry, I believe. And I just don't think he's a good writer. I think he's sexist and I don't think he has that many literary merits. I was saying that I thought this essay by Margaret Atwood we had to read was much more in tune, and my male classmate didn't think so. And I don't remember specifically what he said, but I really felt like he was being condescending towards me and basically telling me that my opinion was wrong, that John Updike was a genius, and that I just wasn't intelligent enough to understand it. And that's not really snubbing me, but it was definitely being judgmental and condescending towards me because of my literary opinions. I also, in a college class, had a professor ask us why we thought that Jane Austen's works are still so popular in the modern day, and one of my classmates, actually a female classmate, not a male classmate this time, say that they thought Jane Austen's works were basically just mindless womanly gossip, and they are things that women read because they are not very intellectual and they're just pure sweet and romantic trash. And I immediately raised my hand and told her how wrong she was, because Jane Austen's novels are hilarious social commentary and satire, and they are not girly books. Not that there's anything wrong with being geared towards women, like I said. However, just to say that they're not intellectual because romance is a major part is a totally incorrect view in my opinion, and I think they have a lot of literary merit in the commentary they're making about that society. So while none of those situations were someone snubbing me exactly because of something I was reading or a literary opinion I had, I definitely felt like I was being talked down to in all of those situations, and that the other person was probably judging me because of the things that I liked. So that's the best answer I can give for this question. So guys, that is the Book Snob book tag. If you are watching this video and you would like to answer the questions for yourself, I hereby tag you. If you decide that you want to do this tag, please link your video down in the comments. I would really like to watch it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Bye! See you next time.